Hey, Drew, how are you doing today?
Wow, you sound like you're exhausted. Like it's a
I
Friday
Yet
and you're ready for the weekend, even though you don't stop on the weekend.
I don't stop.
But yeah, no, I'm good.
Cool, cool. Yeah, it's been a hot I've been busy. I was out at a conference and then I got home and it was like boom, right to the races. So yes, I am tired. But I hear while I was gone that it was freezing. Was it cold?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, we had like nighttime temperatures in the teens
Oh,
and daytime temperatures in the upper 20s and low 30s, which, for central North Carolina is not super common. I mean, it does happen, but
yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty frigid.
Yeah, that's really cold for this area. I'm like I said, I was super excited to miss that, but it was freezing and I was petrified about my house. So I did a few things to hopefully not come home to issues with, you know,
Yep.
pipes bursting or issues like that because it was cold. Even the night I got back, it was pretty cold. I think it was like in the 20s or 30s. So that is one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on here and so we could chat a little bit about what do you do in cold weather to, your house to keep it in good shape and not have any issues occur. So today, the whole time we're chatting is going to be all about taking care of your house and the maintenance on it in cold weather. So again, super excited to have Drew Branyon from the home team on here today. And my name's Carrie Carrico with Carrie Carrico Real Estate. And like I said, today we're going to talk all about cold weather and what it does to your house. So I guess we should just jump right in. One of my first questions is, what is the most common cold weather maintenance issues that you've seen during home inspections?
Yeah, so the most common one that we see, and often doesn't really pop up until the spring,
Yeah.
is frozen hose bibs.
Oh yeah.
So you've got your freeze-proof hose bib
Yeah.
outside, and if you're not disconnecting, like there's two steps to the process, right? You can making sure that you just disconnect your hose,
Yeah.
which works sometimes, and you forget sometimes. Like I still have a hose hooked up on mine,
Yeah.
but basement homes stay a little bit warmer, but that can get that freeze back into the piping,
Yeah.
and cause that piping to crack in the wall. So the next time you turn it on, it starts leaking, either into your crawl space or into your basement, garage, wherever that is, or if you're on a slab home inside your house.
Inside your house.
So
Yeah, I've had that
that's
happen.
the most common one that we see.
Yeah.
You do get when it's been down into the teens the way that it has been, you do
Yeah.
get some frozen pipe sometimes.
Uh-huh.
So important things on that are making sure that if it's going to get really cold and you know that your pipes are exposed, like you're
Yeah.
on a crawl space, where the vents are open and all that stuff, making sure that you're dripping water in a couple different places to make sure that that's at least moving some water through the system.
Yeah.
Like I said, basement homes tend to be a lot more insulated from stuff like that. But closing vents on crawl spaces, making sure that you're running water through consistently, making sure that you're dripping it.
Yeah.
Like small trickle at night is going to help prevent a lot of that stuff. But in North Carolina, the hose bib is the main one.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's such like I had that happen and I was on a slab. That's an expensive little repair because not
Yeah.
only do you fix the plumbing, but then you have to fix the drywall because it like was coming in to my living room. So
Yeah.
I learned the hard way on that one like years and years ago before I got into real estate. So I agree with you. That is the number one and I'm sure that's the number one issue.
Yep.
So what do you feel like the biggest mistakes for home that like homeowners make preparing for the winter? Because I'm just curious about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's the big one, right? Not taking care of your hoses and your
Yeah.
hose bibs. A lot of this stuff is making sure that you're checking things ahead of time so you
Mhm.
don't get caught with your pants down, right? So
Yeah.
like making sure that you're getting your furnace checked before it gets cold,
Yeah.
right? So bring an HVAC company out in September
Yeah.
to make sure that your furnace is operational before it gets too cold and you actually need it, and then you turn it on and it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
Same thing for air conditioner, by the way. Like you should be testing your air conditioner with an HVAC company in February and March,
Yeah.
not April, May, because when you start testing it when it gets warm outside, like if it spikes to 85 degrees
Yeah.
in late March, their phones are going to be ringing off the hook and they're not going to be able to help you. So
Yeah.
you get out in front of it, I think is probably it's probably the biggest mistake that I mean homeowners make in general is just not staying on top of it or not staying a little bit ahead on their maintenance.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you. And that was like our next topic. I was going to talk about HVACs and heating systems. Is there any other benefit you feel like to get, your HVAC or your furnace, inspected and prior to winter? I mean, other than like the obvious, is there any other advantages?
Well, I mean, I think it's just making sure that everything is in good working condition.
Hmm.
Most of the time, like when we get ours done,
Hmm.
most of the time it's just like a hey, like everything looks okay, and
Yeah,
here's maybe some recommendations that we have because,
yeah,
like the truth of it is that you have to be aware of is like
yeah,
they have maintenance programs to
yeah.
sell you something,
Yes,
right? So like those technicians are getting a phone call from their boss if they're walking away with what they call a $0 ticket, right?
yep,
So they're always going to make a recommendation,
yep,
but it's all about trying to see through, what's working, what's not working, or like a
yeah,
good example from ours, like our condensate pump hadn't been working right. Um, for a couple of months and like
yeah,
I knew it, but it was still working fine, right?
yeah,
I had to unclog it a few times and so we
yeah,
just did that as preventative maintenance. I would do that like once every couple months
yeah,
and when they came out to look at our system, they're like, look, this is going to be bad if it does stop working and backing up
yeah,
because now all of a sudden you're going to have water basically going all throughout your basement. So,
yeah,
there are things like that where you're like, all right, yeah, like it's been giving us some problems. There's the reminder, like let's go ahead and
yeah.
get it taken care of. So
Yeah, for sure. So is there any easy maintenance tasks that like a homeowner can do themselves prior to, having somebody come out and just double check the HVAC and the heating
change your filter,
furnaces? Okay, change the filter.
change
Yeah.
your filter. It's
Okay.
I mean like it sounds so simple and it
Yeah.
sounds like you're babying people when you tell them to change your filter,
Yeah.
but the thing is like the first thing that a technician will do when a system is not working
Yeah.
is they'll pull your filter,
Yeah. True.
right? Because oftentimes, like, hey, our air conditioning's not working super well. And they pull the filter and they're like, dude, this hasn't been changed in 5 months.
Yeah.
And the second you pull the filter, all of a sudden it starts working
Yeah.
fine, right?
Yeah.
So, and the good cheap filters,
Yep. That was my
I
next
don't
question.
recommend. I wouldn't recommend getting like the big, super expensive filters because it's going to inhibit airflow, right? Like you
Yeah.
want air to flow through. You don't want junk to get in, but you don't
Yep.
want it to be prohibitive. So, changing your filter, making sure that, take a flashlight and shine it down your registers and making sure that like nothing looks moldy or,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of debris or in my case, goldfish and matchbox
Yeah.
cars, down inside those. But
Yeah.
that's really it. I mean, that's the common thing that we see from home inspection reports too. Like people get upset about how little we can see with HVAC.
Yeah.
And like truth of it is like it's one of those systems that just needs an expert.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think changing the air filters, I always tell everybody just buy them like on Amazon. Buy the cheap ones on
Yep.
Amazon and change them monthly. You're going to probably pay the same amount if you bought the fancy ones, but your system will love you for buying
Yep.
the cheaper ones,
For
honestly.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's move on to frozen pipes. What steps should homeowners take to prevent freezing pipes to occur? I think we already talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but let's kind of dive deeper into that. What other ideas? Like, so before I went out of town, of course, because I sell houses and I ask you guys questions, I always know that the biggest issue people have is water issues when they go out of town. So of course
Yep.
I shut off my water and I drained all the pipes and then, because I was nervous because I knew I was going to be gone for like a week.
Sure.
And I didn't want anything to occur and I knew the house was going to be empty. What should homeowners do to prevent that, to prevent frozen
So
pipes?
yeah, I mean there's a couple things that you can do.
Yeah.
One, like you can leave a trickle in a couple areas, so that way water is continuously running through the pipes and that way
Yeah.
it's not freezing because that moving water is gonna help a lot.
Yeah.
Making sure your hoses are disconnected. If
Yeah.
you're going to be gone for an extended amount of time,
Yeah.
more than like a week or so,
Yeah.
you can turn off your main water.
Yeah.
So, find your main water shut off, turn it off,
Yep.
and then run everything dry.
Yep, that's what I
Um,
did.
yeah, so I mean, like, just open up all your sinks, open up your bathtub, all that kind of stuff to where, water's going to run, and with that water off, it may take 10 or 15 minutes, but everything's going to drain out,
Yep.
and then you don't have that issue. The thing that not a lot of people do, and we've offered this to agents in the past, and no one seems to take us up on it, but
Yeah.
having someone like us like stop by, right? Like, hey, like Carrie's going to be gone for 2 weeks. It's going
Yeah.
to be super cold. Like, hey, we'll go check on the property once, every 2 or 3 days, just to make sure that nothing is happening and
Yeah. That'd be great.
things like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, there's you can also get into, like, if you are experiencing stuff like that consistently, like you can get into looking at insulating your pipes.
Oh yeah.
So wrapping your pipes to keep them
Uh-huh.
warmer, those kind of things. But
Yeah.
it is like, not to undercomplicate stuff, but it is pretty simple. Like, just leave a trickle going, you should be all right.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you. Yeah. And that's kind of like what I was like, okay, which one should I do? So I just kind of did both. And just because I was just worried because it was freezing. And I always I always think about it. I'm like, man, if my water line freezes from my refrigerator and it's getting cold, in North
Yep.
Carolina, other places, I mean, that happens. So, one other question I have for you is what happens to what should a homeowner do to minimize the damage if their pipes do freeze? I mean, what
Uh,
should they do?
Shut off the water as soon as you can.
Okay.
The second you notice it, don't try, like, it's shut the water off and call a
Yeah.
plumber.
Yeah.
Don't try to fix it. Don't try to bypass it.
Yeah.
You don't, we talk about it all the time, right? Like, water is the biggest enemy in a house. And
Yes.
if you have a pipe
Yep.
under your house, or, on inside of a wall or something like that, that cracks and is starting to leak, like,
Yeah.
you need to get, that's like, there's a lot of things in a house that can wait. Like, that's not one of them.
No, no, it is not one. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a serious thing. So what areas do you feel like in the home are like the most vulnerable for freezing? Is there any areas that like a homeowner should, like especially like a first-time homeowner, like if they're watching this, what areas should they worry about most?
Crawl space.
Okay.
Crawl space,
Mm.
typically on, like, garage and basement, you're going to get insulation from, the foundation, or, from insulate. Like, most garages are still going to be insulated, right? They're not
Yeah.
going to be heated,
No.
but they're going to be insulated.
Yeah.
So, crawl spaces are going to provide a lot of problems, especially if, vents are open, and, there's
Yeah.
already moisture under. Like, you have a wet crawl space anyway, and that
Yeah.
moisture starts to freeze, and starts collecting there.
Yeah.
Attic spaces can get really cold.
Yeah.
But no one wants to do it, and
Yeah.
it's one of the things that we see consistently from people that think they take good care of their house,
Yeah.
that they never go in the crawl space. So
Yeah.
the second they go, like, you have to know what you're looking forward to a little bit, but, like, even just hopping in, shining a flashlight and seeing, like, hey, is there standing water in here? Is
Yeah.
there insulation falling down? Is there anything that looks out of place?
Yeah.
Taking a look at your crawl space, popping your head in the attic. It takes 3 minutes. We're not suggesting, like, go crawl everything.
Yeah.
You can if you want to, but
Yeah.
um, those are going to be the areas that are going to be the most susceptible.
Yeah. And I've also heard that, I don't know if I'm right or wrong about this, but I've learned that because I had a house that the insulation wasn't correct, the rating that they used. So I think sometimes even though people probably don't want to replace their insulation, I feel like maybe upgrading it might help. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's all comfort level, and what,
Yeah.
you know energy efficient. And
Yeah.
the thing with, like, energy efficiency right now too is, like, a lot of people are wanting, like, net zero homes and closed homes and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And that's great for energy, but it can cause other issues too.
Yeah.
So, like, there's no perfect solution.
Mhm.
But I think, like, when you're talking about insulation too,
Yeah.
just making sure that, you know, areas are insulated, that when you do peek your head in the crawl space and you see the insulation falling down, that you're putting it back up, or getting a
Yeah.
handyman that can go in there and put it back up,
Yeah.
to make sure that you're, inside the home is protected.
Mhm.
And then just making sure that you're keeping your house at a decent temperature.
Yeah, for sure. So we're gonna move on to like roofs and gutters and stuff. What role do gutters play in a winter home maintenance? Like how often should you check them? Because I know there's a lot of people that just don't check them. But
Yeah.
what's your thoughts of gutters.
I mean, get them cleaned or have gutter guards on them, right?
Mhm.
So getting them cleaned on a regular basis. Gutters in the winter here aren't really going to like it's going to be pretty normal throughout the winter, right? Like
Yeah.
the area that you can get caught is where we had some snow in the beginning of January, and
Mhm.
roof has snow for several days, and then
Yeah.
all of it's melting at the same time because it doesn't happen slowly here. Like we
Yeah.
tend, like I tell my kids that like I could grow up in North Carolina and it was
Yeah.
not uncommon for us to be sledding in 70-degree weather, right?
Yeah.
We're coming home from school where we got t-shirt and a shorts on and we're going sledding because there's still a little bit of snow left over. So
Yeah.
like when it happens in North Carolina, it happens quick.
Yeah.
And so you have a ton of melting snow that's all going through your system at the same time. And
Yeah.
so when that happens, you're going to see problems that never existed before.
Yeah.
Um, so I think like again, it's just staying on top of the maintenance, making sure that your gutters are cleaned. If there's snow coming and you haven't done it, like get it done before the snow happens.
Mhm.
There's other things with the roof when you start talking about like
Yeah.
ice dams and things like
Yeah.
that, or like where snow's collecting in certain areas.
Yeah.
But you really, really don't have to worry about that too much here.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that was another question. Like, what signs of potential roof damage get worse during the winter? I mean, like, do you know what type do you guys see?
Um, so I mean, like again, it's going to be like snow collection points. So if
Mhm.
like familiar with what like so I'll explain this as best as I can.
Yeah.
So like behind a chimney is a good example. So
Yeah.
behind a chimney, you have typically what's called like cricket flashing,
Mhm.
right? So it's like a little triangle that goes up behind the chimney that allows water to divert
Okay.
around the chimney.
Yeah.
So if that cricket's not there and everything's kind of backing up against the chimney can cause issues,
Yeah.
or that's often like that's a spot where like snow's going to collect.
Yeah.
And if your flashing is not properly sealed, it's a very common place for, chimney leaks are probably the most common roof leaks we see.
Yeah.
So, if that flashing is not properly sealed and you've got snow sitting on top of there, like you're going to have more chance for leaks. But
Yeah.
it's really about like kind of predicting where is snow going to leak and is that section of the roof well maintained. And there's not a lot of roofing companies that want to do repairs, but there are a few. You pay $100 a year to get somebody up on your roof to go around with a tube of caulk and seal everything up.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny that you're talking about that because I actually had one house a couple years ago in Greensboro that y- the seller didn't realize that there was like some roof issues, but that's how we found out during the
Mhm.
process of selling the house is it snowed and in one area we had issues when it was melting. And it like we saw where the issue was.
Yeah,
But
and I mean it's
yeah,
getting into stuff like that, it's very
yeah,
similar to like giant thunderstorms. I make a joke every time like we have like a giant thunderstorm or a hurricane tropical storm rolls through
yeah,
for a day or so. Like my phone's gonna start ringing because
yeah.
people are gonna think that we didn't tell them that things might get wet when a hurricane comes,
Oh yeah.
right? So like
Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing with snow, but like major weather events are going to put stress on the system.
Hmm.
And so your home could be fine 363 days a year, but those
Yeah.
2 days that it had snow when it starts to melt, like might show things that the other times of the year is not really an issue, right? So like
Yeah.
there is some of that too. Of like you got to get it investigated, get an expert out, take a look at it. But I mean, there's sometimes like we get water in our garage, and there's really not much we can do about it. But it only shows up like twice a year, so like we're not
Yeah.
going to be overly concerned with it. We're going to keep an eye on it, make sure it doesn't get worse,
Yeah.
clean it up as it happens. But
Yeah.
um, it's not a lot of stuff like that. Like as long as you're paying attention to it, it's not a huge deal.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, just off the fly, I'm from the West Coast, so I'm used to like snow, but
Hmm.
not ice. Ice
Hmm.
is like a new thing for me here, and it freaks me out. And like, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's ice everywhere. What do you see with ice here? Because that's the part like where like, I'm like, what do you do? I mean, do you leave the ice? Do you let it on, if it's on the HVAC, what do you do? Or what do you do on the roof? I mean, because ice is heavy. I mean, the water, when it's like, it's just, I feel like it's very destructive.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully we haven't had, a lot of
Knock
ice
on
here.
wood. Let's,
Yeah. I mean, there were times when, we were growing up that there were 3 or 4 inches of ice, right?
Yeah.
And that creates all sorts of different issues. But
Yeah.
most HVAC systems now are going to have a defrost, so
Yeah.
like it's going to freeze up, but it's going to melt it off as it kicks on and starts warming
Yeah.
up, or you're running a furnace and the outside doesn't really matter anyway.
Yeah.
But same kind of thing. Like
Mhm.
there's only so much you can do as a homeowner, like after it's happened. But
Yeah.
if your your systems in the house are designed to withstand a lot of stuff too,
Yeah.
right? So like a layer of ice on the roof isn't going to hurt things.
Mhm.
You know, 8 inches of snow on your roof might be a little bit different of a story, but
Yeah.
again, like it's I operate on the 80/20 rule. Like don't keep yourself up at night
Yeah.
with the exceptions, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're going to move on to indoor air quality and the winter because that really is a big thing. We go over this like all the time because I know you and I, when we do home inspections, we're always, radon is a big thing. So we
Yep.
always are thinking about indoor air quality, but how does it change how does the winter, weather change the impact of like air quality in the house with the systems and everything else? I mean, how can a homeowner improve that?
So, I mean, there's a couple things that you can do to improve air quality in your house in general. Like we have a ultraviolet filter on our HVAC system that
Okay.
kills germs and stuff like that as it's coming
Oh,
through. So, like I have 3 small kids, so like the first thing when I think of air quality is about
yeah,
germs, right? It's about
yeah,
the flu coming in or the stomach bug being passed around or stuff like
yeah,
that. So, like there are systems, they're not cheap, but you
yeah.
can put them on your entire system that
Mhm.
cleans the air as it's coming through.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the thing with air quality, otherwise, like I think it's just trying to like it's going to be drier in the
Mhm.
house, right? So like you might have to run a humidifier in a couple of
Yeah,
rooms. Humidity, if you have a humidity gauge on
yeah,
your HVAC system or put one in your house,
yeah.
you want to be staying between like 45 and 55% is where you
Okay.
should be,
Uh-huh.
but like 50-ish is probably about right. So if like you're in your house and you start seeing it drop below 45%
Yeah.
humidity, you might want to start running some humidifiers. So that's when you start getting like you can tell in homes like door cracking starts becoming prevalent because the
Yeah.
moisture's getting sucked out of the drywall.
Yeah.
People are getting bloody noses and things
Oh
along
yeah.
those lines. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
air quality inside the house, it's all about filtration and staying on top of
Yeah.
water issues. You mentioned radon. Radon levels tend to go higher in the winter.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I didn't know
so
that.
cold weather actually, like, I don't know the exact science behind it, but
Yeah.
radon travels more freely from the ground during the winter months.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. I did not know that. That's a that's a good one. And if you think about it, they're definitely gonna be higher because people are not opening the windows. Radon
Yep.
gets trapped.
People
So
don't open their windows anymore anyway. So
no, they don't. Yeah, I agree with you. They do not. Not well, yeah, not many people do. So
no.
yeah, so that's an issue. And I know radon levels could be worse in a newer home because they're more built tighter.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where we talked about like, all the energy efficiency stuff like
Yes.
creates other issues. Like it does create,
Yeah.
higher chances of radon and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we already kind of talked about this, but we can kind of hit on it again. What's the best way to prevent moisture and condensation issues in the home during the winter? I think we talked about it. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's making sure that you know like where the problem points are in your house,
Yeah,
right? So you move into the house, hopefully you get a home inspection before you move in. Like take that report and keep it, right? Keep it available, look at
yeah,
it, because you're going to know where your common points of concern are, and
hmm
making sure that you're checking those along the way.
yeah,
Like you definitely will get, sometimes where you've got, um, you're hitting dew points on different things. Like
yeah,
our vents in our garage, it happens more in the summer for us, but like it'll start raining in our garage, right?
yeah,
Because our ducts are going through there, and
yeah,
doors are open, and it's humid, and
yeah,
it starts coming down. So we know where the common spots are in our house that become issues when cold happens. But I mean, really maintaining moisture levels are going to tend to be lower in a
Hmm.
house
Yep.
in the wintertime, which is great because the humidity is a lot lower.
Yeah.
But how you fix it and how you change it doesn't really change during the season.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get that completely. And I'm glad you brought that up. So, if you're preparing, like, let's say you're preparing for, say, any kind of emergency when this kind of stuff does happen, what supplies should a homeowner have on hand? Just we might have a first-time home buyer out there that may be curious about this.
Yeah, I would say it's always good to keep like a big box fan handy.
Yeah.
Um, because if you do get moisture, like dry it up quick,
Mhm.
put a fan on it, call a water damage company, they'll come in, they'll help dry it out for you.
Yeah.
But that box fan is going to help move air across it and try to dry out as much as you
Yeah.
can. Other tools like that are helpful to have. If you don't know where your main water shutoff is, know where your main water shutoff
Yep.
is. If you're in an older home that hasn't been updated with the main water shutoff, making sure that you have one of the wrenches that can turn it off at the street.
Yeah.
Again, it's all about like our neighbor has one of those houses where it just doesn't have a main water shut off
Oh, yeah.
inside the house, right?
Yeah.
And they had an issue, water pipe burst,
Mhm.
and elderly homeowner, and like the house literally was leaking from the outside, like it was coming
That's
out underneath the
crazy.
siding and was raining outside because they had flooded the second floor and come
Yeah.
through. And she didn't know what to do. And thankfully, she's surrounded by a guy that owns a roofing company, a guy that owns a
Yeah.
home inspection company, a handyman that lives on the street. Like we had like
Wow.
all sorts of people. So
Yeah.
we're able to go off and turn off her water pretty quick. But
Yeah.
having that tool available to know, like, hey, I can if I can't get it turned off here, that I can go out to the street, I can flip it off real quick and start going the process from there.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny you're talking about the main water shut off because like that's like one of the biggest things that if people don't want to show up at a home inspection when we do home inspections, I'm like, okay, well at least you need to know where this is. So it'll be
Yep.
on the inspection report. So just make sure you read it because
Yep.
I mean, being able to shut off your water, I feel like is one of the biggest ways you can safeguard your house.
And it's another reason why you should always keep the inspection report on file, right? Like
Yeah.
I've done some for friends where they text me 6 months later and they're like, "Hey, where's our main water shut off?" I was like, "Hey, read your inspection report."
Yeah, yeah. I've actually looked it up for past buyers when
Yeah,
they've asked and sellers because like I'll get the home inspection report and I don't know why they call me, but they call me and not their, buyer's agent
yep.
or something, but I'll be the one looking it up and figuring it out for them. So I've done that too. So yeah, it's such a big deal to keep them on file and kind of like for your clients too, and in case they lose them. Um,
Yep.
so if a homeowner only had time to do three things to prepare their house for winter, what three things would you, suggest?
Disconnect your hose bibs.
Okay.
So disconnect all the hoses
Yeah.
from the outside. If you have the ability to have a shut off on the other side,
Mhm.
like the ones in our garage have like we have two hose bibs, one on the back, one on the front. They both have shut offs in our basement, so we can shut off water to the outside spigot on top of it. So like when I say like our hose is hooked up,
Yeah.
well the shut off is also shut off. So like the
Yeah.
chances of it being a big deal is pretty slim. But
Yeah.
taking the hoses off, shutting off the shut off to the hose bib. From there,
Yeah.
not your main water shut off, but the other shut off.
Yeah.
And then you know, just a general check of your systems to make sure everything's working all right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I always think like the insulation on the HVAC system, if you have an HVAC, I mean like make sure things are insulated. I feel like that's a pretty cheap and easy thing
Yep.
that anyone can do. So that's always my thought. So do you know any lesser known cold weather maintenance tips that do you have any that we might be able to share with folks?
You know, I think one of the things that people generally don't understand, and it makes total sense because it is complicated,
Yeah.
is in North Carolina we're running heat pumps, right?
Yeah.
So a heat pump is essentially an air conditioner that works in reverse to heat
Yep.
your home.
Yeah.
And the newer systems are running heat pumps all the way down to like 0 degrees.
Yeah.
But like my heat pump, which was 2016, I think,
Uh-huh.
shuts off at 40 degrees. So anything below 40, our gas furnace turns on and provides backup heat.
Yeah.
Well, I love gas furnaces because they're hot, right?
Yeah,
Like
they are.
the temperature in the house is,
Yeah.
like coming out of the vents is 120 versus 90. So
Yeah.
it feels a lot better. But
Yeah.
oftentimes, like understanding where that cutoff is,
Hmm.
because on an electric heat pump, which is what most heat pumps are, right?
Hmm.
They're
Yeah.
electric. All heat pumps are electric, and then there's a backup furnace, right?
Yeah.
So when the heat pump doesn't work anymore or is designed to shut off,
Yes.
that backup furnace turns on. And if that's electric heat and you're running like electric power strips
Yeah.
as your furnace, can get really, really pricey.
Yeah.
So when you're doing the maintenance, asking the question of your HVAC guy, hey, when does my heat pump stop working?
Uh-huh.
And is it safe to lower that temperature?
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, it's safe for our heat pump to run at 40 and above? Like I don't really care because I don't mind the gas backup, but
Yeah.
if I had heat strips, I certainly would be asking my HVAC guy, like, hey, how low can we take this without damaging the system?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Can we do it at 32? Can we do it at 25? Can we do it at 15? What does that look like? And people don't know how to ask the question. But then also, so understanding that shut off point, but also I think like this is an efficiency standpoint and cost standpoint
Yeah.
that people still operate their house like they're a college student, right? So
Yeah.
you turn like I mean, there were times in my college house that we could see the breath in the
Yeah.
air. Like we were, I was in Boone and we were like, we're not running the heat. It's gonna
Yeah.
be like 45 degrees in the house. We can see, everybody's
Yeah.
got like gloves and mittens and hats on. Like, don't be that guy. But
Yeah.
because that also can cause your pipes to freeze a lot more too. But
Yeah.
the thing with a heat pump is it's designed to be the most efficient when it's maintaining the same temperature.
Yes.
So when it gets really cold outside and you're like, hey, this is going to be heating my house and I don't want a $500 power bill. Nobody does.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it down to 60 during the day when I'm not here and I'm going to jack it up to 70
Yeah.
when I come in here. It's actually going to do the reverse of what you think because it's going to kick those heats on and is gonna, because when you bump it up 10 degrees, like
Yeah.
that's job is to get it as fast as it can
Yes.
to that new temperature, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's gonna turn on the heat strips to do it to get back to that 70 degrees where the heat pump will turn back on. So you're gonna actually cause yourself a higher power bill and less efficiency by varying the temperature a lot. So figure out the temperature that you're comfortable with, keep it there or within 1 or 2 degrees. That keeps
Yeah.
the heat pump running consistently. It's going to keep it the most efficient.
Hmm.
And if you notice, like when you know, air's coming out and the heat pump's on, like it's not very hot, right? It's
Yeah.
only like 85 degrees, 90 degrees,
Yeah.
because that's all it's designed to do, right? It's designed to maintain the temperature that's there. So
Yes.
it's, um, working and understanding what kind of system you have in the house. HVAC guys will help explain that to you. I'll help explain it to you.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy to understand. Like it's complicated. Like it's one of the things that we have to spend the most time on with our new inspectors is like, what is a heat pump? How does it work? Why does it function the way that it does? How is it designed to heat the home? How do you explain it to a customer? Like all those kind of things. But
Yeah.
um, that's probably one that like goes unnoticed a lot is people think that, hey, I'll just turn my heat down to save some money, save some efficiency, and I'm keeping a healthier home. But
Yeah.
in reality, that actually it sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually
Yeah.
the right thing to do just to keep it flat all the way across the board.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. And I think it'd be less like wear and tear too. I mean, just like all the way around it. It's yeah,
Well,
totally.
heat strips burn out all the time too, right?
Yeah.
The more that you use the backup heat, the higher chance of that of going out, right? And that's
Yeah.
a pretty common issue that we see
Hmm.
because we test heat pump function
Yeah.
and then we also test the backup function to make sure everything's working right. And
Yeah.
it's not uncommon for us to test the backup function and either it's not working or it's not working well,
Yeah.
because they're running the system like that. It burns the heat strips out. Like it's not designed to heat your house consistently over time.
Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense. That I mean that and that's interesting. Learned a few things new
Yeah,
today.
it's
So
there.
that's
If you
exciting.
just think of like your
Yeah.
backup furnace is there as a supplement, not your primary.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. And that's so interesting. And also cost wise. I mean, I didn't think about,
Mhm.
when you hear people, they're like they raise it a
And
lot.
it's the same thing with air conditioning in the summer too, right? Like
Yeah.
I mean, air conditioning is meant to maintain
Hmm.
temperature,
Yeah.
right? The more that you fluctuate things, the more it's going to cost because like if you keep your temperature higher and then try to bring it back down, like the system's working harder because it's trying to pull humidity out of the air and
Yep.
like all those different things. So like keeping things steady
Yep.
is where that system is going to maximize its efficiency.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. And that totally makes sense. Definitely some things I've learned today. So I have one more question for you.
Yep.
So the last time we talked about a pre-listing inspection. And this kind of question goes back to, maybe more of that, the time that we chatted before. But when you are, how can how do I put this? How can a inspector help identify or home inspection help identify potential winter related issues that could become major, in case you're wanting to sell your house or, just so that you don't have the issues if you
If
don't want to sell.
if I were to put my house on the market, I
Yeah.
would get a pre-listing inspection done and
Uh-huh.
would also get a professional HVAC technician to do a diagnostic on my system.
Okay.
So I personally would not lean on a home inspector to predict those issues
Mhm.
because it's one of the few systems in a house that, like we talked about before, like it just needs an
Yeah.
expert on it, right? There's
Yeah.
things that we can see, but not really, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not testing refrigerant pressures. We
Oh
can't
yeah.
test the capacitor. We can't go into like pull the voltage on a blower motor and make sure that it's pulling the right volts and like like all there's all sorts of things that you need specialty gauges and experience to
Yeah.
do where we're looking at we're just measuring temperature and making sure there's not like damage to the unit, right? Like we're very very surface level with HVAC.
Yeah.
So if you're about to put your house on the market, it's an expensive system, right? Like it's one of your top two
Yep.
expensive systems to replace, either that and the roof, right? And those are the two biggest questions that we get are like, how's the HVAC system? How's the roof, right? Because they know those
Yeah.
are the expensive ones. So if you're about to put your house on the market, I always would recommend getting a home inspection done. But if you don't want to, at least get an HVAC person to give you like a report. They'll give you the invoice with the report on it that basically says, hey, everything's good to go, because that's going to give comfort to the buyer. And also, like, I mean, as a CYA thing, kind of puts it back on
Yeah.
the HVAC company. And I mean, mechanical stuff fails all the time, right? It's
Yeah.
not saying it's their fault, but puts you at less of a liability as a seller to say, like, hey, look, we're moving into the winter months. We got this done. This is going to give you confidence that our 8-year-old system is going to work just fine, or probability is going to be high that it works just fine going
Yeah.
into the winter. And again, anything you do ahead of time is going to instill confidence in the buyer. And
Yeah.
we were talking about before of like we're seeing a lot more deals fall apart right now. Like
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons, right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize this. I did research because we talked about pre-listings. I did
Yeah.
research after the fact instead of
Uh-huh.
before the fact. That's how I operate. But 36% of real estate transactions are delayed due to home inspection issues.
Yeah. That's
So, I
crazy.
mean, you're talking one out of three.
Yeah.
So, you sell 30 homes,
Mhm.
10 of your homes are going to be delayed due to a home inspection issue somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
So like keeping that in mind, like, is it worth the 250 bucks to pay an HVAC guy to look at your systems and not delay the process? Like, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
when you look at like cost of what it takes to go back on the market, and
Oh,
no fault to the seller, of course, but
yeah.
all that stuff.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you completely. I mean, and also it's just like it helps the listing agent too when you do have those inspections because you can be confident you're like, here, like this
Yep.
is it's in good shape. Call him, call the HVAC guy.
It's
Yeah.
it's scary. I mean, like I get like it's scary sometimes because you got to disclose it, right?
Yeah.
And that's scary because like you go into a $1 million house. I'm just using that for a round number,
Yeah.
and as an agent, and like I don't know, it's people always say like I'm in it for the clients. It's like, well, I mean, you get paid well to do this. Like
Yeah.
it's okay to say like I get paid well and I need to make money. You $1 million house, you get between 20 and $30,000 worth of commission, and all of a sudden you have to disclose these big issues, and you're like the first thing you're thinking of is like, oh, how's this going to affect my payday, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a natural thing to think. So, but at the same time, like you're thinking about it short term, where if you look at the big picture of it and go like, oh, okay, yeah, we got some issues to deal with, but if we get it taken care of ahead of time, like now you're protecting that. If you're the seller, you're protecting the sales price, or not having to put it back on the market because this popped up in the middle, and now you got to pay for that $10,000 repair and knock your price down by 20,000, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we've seen that happen over and over.
Oh, I know. And we still don't have that many houses like that are on the market either. So it makes your house look so much more appealing when you have the issue repaired or you
Because you don't
research.
have the houses on the market, but you're not getting the competition that you had 3 years ago. So like
Exactly.
there's still demand out there,
Yep.
but people aren't doing stupid deals
Yeah.
because of 7% interest rates, right? Like
Yeah.
they were doing stupid deals 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Like it didn't make sense. Like you were
Yep.
buying, people were buying houses, and then in a month of living there, they're like, whoops, need to
Yep.
sell this one. Don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So like, you got to be careful of that.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I agree with you. You have to be careful with everything and just make sure, as a real estate agent, you do the best job you can for your seller or buyer
Yep.
through, doing your due diligence. That's the name of it. That's such a big part of the job. So I
Well,
agree
and
with you.
you earn your commission not on putting the sign in the yard. You earn your commission on how you handle the transaction, right?
Exactly.
So
Yep.
that's like when people ask, like, I don't want a realtor. I was like, you do, because you need to know how to navigate the transaction. And like, yeah, you could post a video tour on Facebook and promote your own house, right? Like that's fine.
Yeah.
But Carrie's going to come in as a stone cold killer and knock you down if she's the buyer's agent on it, right? So like, you got to know how to handle that.
Yeah, you do. Well, and it's true because like my mind is like I'm 20 feet ahead, like before we even get out like this, to the starting line. So,
Yep.
because my head is like, yeah, so I get that completely. Yeah, for sure. Well, Drew, I appreciate you coming on and chatting all about all these crazy winter issues you could possibly have and how to handle them. Again, I appreciate it so much. I appreciate all the time that you give to us. And if you want or need any of Drew's information, I will have all his information below. And if you also need to get a hold of him, you can just reach out to me and I will connect you to Drew. But thank you again, Drew Branyon from the home team. We appreciate all the time that you give
Yep.
us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.